Hello, so we're going to create a monoprint from nature, and we're going to use these plastic or rubber leaves. That way anybody who's allergic to pollen or anything outside, they don't have an allergic reaction. So we're going to use these synthetic leaves to create a monoprint from them. So there's two ways that you can apply the color to the leaf. You can use a sponge roller, which I really like how evenly it adds the paint, or you can just use a paintbrush, which a paintbrush will work equally well. So if we don't have enough of the rollers for the color that you want, or somebody else is using them, you can always use a paintbrush. You don't have to wait. And we're going to use just plain squirt bottle tempera. So this is the tempera that's in the green baskets. And what I like to do is roll a color over the leaf and then add an additional color to add and let it mix to make a third color. So I'm going to roll a lighter color on first. You just need a little bit of the tempera in the tray, and then you're going to take your sponge roller and roll it across the paint. It's a sponge, so it likes to suck that paint up. You want to look and make sure you have paint all the way around, and then you're going to roll this onto your synthetic leaf. You want to roll it evenly and try to get in all the little tips of the leaves, and including the stem down here. Alright, now I could print this as is, but it would just be one color, which isn't that exciting. So I'm going to get a little bit of magenta to add and mix along the edges of the leaves, so that I can create a third color, which magenta and yellow together, they make a pretty orange color. So I'm just going to add that on some of the tips. And you can see a real small amount of the magenta goes a long way. It also definitely makes an orange color. You could add more magenta to make a darker orange. And I don't want to do the whole thing, so maybe I'll just do the top part. So I'm trying to go from like a real deep orange to a light orange to a yellow. And we'll see if that works. Then you're going to get yourself some white paper. And I should have some nice thin white paper. You want the paper to be thin. You don't want the nice thick drawing paper, because it won't form to the leaf. It'll be too stiff. So I prefer some thinner paper. You're going to write your name and the day you have art. I'm going to move this away from that, and I can print it in the middle. I can print it over to one side and print a bunch of them. I could just print it on one half. Maybe I needed just half the sheet. And you're going to lay this down, and then you're going to rub with your fingers and try not to move the paper and let the paper shift on you. And when you feel like you've rubbed all the edges of the leaf, you're going to pull the paper up. And see, these synthetic leaves really do have some really nice texture, and you can see the veining of the leaf, and that's just really beautiful. So just one leaf, if it's pretty enough and you think it stands out enough, that's good. Or you could print some more. So then I would need to add more paint. Now I don't want to run this roller over the parts where I've added the magenta, because then I would get that onto the roller and ruin it for somebody else. So I'm just going to add another small light layer of paint. If you paint this on too thick, you really lose all that texture and beautiful detail. And then I'm going to lay it down on the paper. Let it overlap the first leaf a little bit, and then rub. I'm trying to create a nice, neat composition while I do this. Notice how the paper wrinkles a little bit as you press down. So there's another leaf. That's really pretty. I like how I put one this way and then I flipped it and put it the other way. And so now just one more leaf to fill the white paper. So I'm going to gently add some yellow without getting that color on my sponge roller. Notice I didn't put any more paint in that tray for the sponge roller. I had plenty already on the sponge. And again, just a small amount of paint goes a really long way on these synthetic leaves. And I'm going to, since I have this one going upside down. I'm going to have the next one going upside down as well. And there I have a really pretty, looks like a fall leaf, repeated over my paper. And this is a Monoprint with Nature, because all three of these look very different. Even though I use the same leaf, I arranged, there's no way to put the paint on exactly the same way. So each one's a little different. This one shows a lot of veining here and a lot of veining here, but I don't have as much there. This one has a lot of more pink. This one has kind of a mixture of a coral color and pink, and this one has a lot of orange. So each one's a little different. And monoprint means one print, which means you can only print it one way one time. You can't print it the same way over and over again. They just look different each time. So I want to show you one other way. So this was color on the leaf and then printed on white paper. I want to show you that you can also print on colored paper. So I'm going to use a different leaf, and I should explain to you how to clean this off. You will take this over to the sink, you'll turn the water on halfway, not full blast, and you'll use a sponge and clean off the top of this leaf and also clean off the edges of the sleeve where the ink is, or where the paint is. So I'm going to use just white to paint this leaf. Remember, just a small amount goes a long way. So I'm going to get a little bit on my paintbrush and I paint it right over the top. So this is a way to do it if you don't have access to a rolling sponge. You don't necessarily need a rolling sponge. I like the rolling sponge, but a paintbrush with a small amount of paint on it, not putting it on gloopy and gloppy, really does the trick as well. So then I'm going to move this out of the way and clean this white paint off, because I don't want to get that on my colored paper. Move this back over. Then I'm going to take a colored paper, and I chose black because it was just the scrap that I have, but you could choose any color really, any color of paper. And I'm going to print this onto my black paper. Pull that up, and that creates a nice interesting effect on the white on black. You could do white on purple. White on a dark color looks best. White on yellow isn't going to show up very well. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more paint to this and print it again. This out of the way. You need a paper towel. I don't want to get up and get a paper towel because I'm right by my tissue, so I'm using tissue, but please use a paper towel. Lay this back down. All right, and then I have room for one more leaf, so print it a third time. The less paint you put on, the thinner the paint you put on, the more likely you're going to be able to see those veins of the leaves and that textural detail. And this one's running off down here off the black paper, and that's okay. And so there I have a nice print of 3 leaves, white on black. And I like that this is kind of a scrap paper and it's just skinny and rectangle. It's not the traditional rectangle paper that we use. It's cut a different shape and a different size, and that just looks more interesting. So there is how you can print on colored paper a monoprint of nature.